Most gardeners that I've talked to don't know how easy it is to make their own potting mix and save tons of money. Not only that, but when you make your own mix, you are getting to control exactly what goes into the pot and then into your garden. So in this video, we're taking a look at what goes into one of the most popular brands of potting mix, and then we're going to compare it to our homemade recipe. Now, I went in expecting things to shake out a certain way, but I'll say when I actually compared the quality and the price of these two options, I was shocked at what I found. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Taylor, and over the past few years, I've really wrapped my brain around the DIY part of gardening. I love finding creative, cost-saving solutions to growing amazing plants, and our potting soil is one of those areas that I've thought about and tinkered around with a lot over the years. Made some mistakes, learned some lessons, and came through with a recipe that I'm really happy with. We've got a lot of free resources, including the recipe to our potting soil that we want you to have, a lot of amendments that we mentioned in this video, so we'll provide links in the description for each of those. If you would find that helpful, you now know where to look. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what you're getting when you buy one of these bags of store-bought potting mixes, the upsides and the downsides, and then we'll go into making your own and what that can look like. I'll talk you through the 3 basic ingredients that will give you a great starting place. They work on their own perfectly well. But then we'll talk through some ways that you can start to add in some bonus ingredients and start to upgrade your potting mix game. First of all, so that we get our definition straight, what is potting soil? Potting soil or potting mix is a substrate or growing medium that is specifically tuned to grow plants from seed. It usually contains materials that aid in water retention and materials that aid in proper drainage. Potting soil is all about balancing those 2 factors, water retention and drainage. Beyond that, a good potting soil will have a robust microbial community and a few nutrients that help the seedling along after it's used up all of the nutrients stored in the plant seed. The ingredients that are typically used to accomplish this are something like peat moss or a high carbon shredded wood product for moisture retention, and then a lightweight rock like vermiculite or perlite that give the mix its structure and help with drainage. You need your potting mix to be able to hold onto water, but not so much that algae and undesirable bacteria and fungi start to grow. So let's talk about what you're getting with one of these bags of store-bought potting mix. There are a ton of varieties and brands and options out there, but there's one brand that you're almost guaranteed to see. And maybe you've bought this in the past, or you have some now, or you plan on getting some for this season. It's Miracle-Gro. Now there are plenty of options out there other than this one. But because this is kind of hands down the largest supplier of home gardener fertilizer, compost, herbicides, potting mix, this is what we're going to look at. So just a cursory look at the labels and the text on the bag communicates, grows plants twice as big, feeds them for up to 6 months, more blooms for more color. And as far as the ingredients, we have a little variety depending on what state you're buying this in. But essentially we've got processed forest products, peat, coir, and other compost, sphagnum, peat moss, perlite, fertilizer, and a wetting agent. So is there a problem with buying a bag of this stuff to start your plants? I'm going to say yes. First and foremost, the thing that caught my eye immediately was this guy right here. It says, we recommend wearing gardening gloves when using this or other planting materials. You just got to ask why. It doesn't say anywhere on the bag exactly why. It doesn't say why they recommend using gloves for this material or any other planting materials. So I went ahead and did some research on what could possibly be in here that warrants skin protection, and I found a few things that you'll probably want to be aware of. First, there's this material safety data sheet for the Miracle-Gro potting mix that I found online, and on here they say, may irritate skin and eyes, if ingested may cause vomiting, diarrhea, or mucous membrane irritation. Under the potential health side effects, in the ingestion category it says, practically non-toxic. Practically. It's a little bit toxic. A little later on, under the first aid measures, they actually say if it gets on your bare skin, take off your clothing, rinse your skin immediately with plenty of water for 15 to 20 minutes. Seems a bit excessive for something that's practically non-toxic. If swallowed, the advice is to immediately call a poison control center for treatment advice. For handling and storage, they recommend avoiding inhalation, contact with skin, eyes, or clothing. Keep it out of lakes, streams, or ponds, and then in all caps, it says keep out of reach of children. Now, you could say that they are just trying to cover their bases here. They don't want people suing, for sure. Maybe they're just playing it safe. But there was an ingredient that caught my eye, the wetting agent. Now, we make a wetting agent that kind of binds all of our natural fertilizers and fungicides together, but ours is fully biodegradable. We have a video on how to make it if you'd like to see. If it's only got a few ingredients, it's perfectly safe for humans and plants, soil, etc. I looked into what the wetting agent the Miracle-Gro potting mix contains, and it's something called polyacrylamide. Now, poly means many, and acrylamide refers to a substance that has been linked to neurotoxicity and is classified as a probable human carcinogen. It's also been definitively linked to increased tumor incidences in animal studies. As far as environmental risks, does this sound like something that would benefit your local ecology? I'll admit, I am very sensitive to this kind of thing. I probably err on the safe side of overly cautious. But if you are trying to reduce the overall toxic load that your body is exposed to, you will really want to consider if this is worth it. The bag doesn't say specifically what percentage of the constitution is wetting agent. From what I found, the most conservative estimates say that a 0.5 percentage point of this could be devoted to the wetting agent. That would mean that at the very least, this 6.5 pound bag contains a little over an ounce of polyacrylamide, or 14 grams. Now, if you're rubbing your hands through this stuff for any length of time, handling the soil blocks or potted soil, putting this in your garden, you're being exposed to dangerous levels of this toxic substance. I could not find any appropriate level of exposure when it comes to contact with the skin, because skin is highly absorbent. You have to think of your skin as a sponge, especially when you're getting this stuff wet. Finally, in my research, I found that agricultural grade polyacrylamide can contain between 1,000 and 5,000 times more acrylamide than personal care products, which begs the question, how is this stuff even legal to sell? Well, it's no big mystery when you look at the practices and partnerships of the company Scott's Miracle-Gro. They are the primary seller of the ubiquitous and thoroughly poisonous herbicide known as Roundup, the household name for glyphosate, which is among the worst of all chemical herbicides. So does this company care about your health or the health of your plants or about the health of our planet? You can decide. Now, as far as the other ingredients, we've got processed forest products, sphagnum peat moss, perlite, compost, fertilizer, and the wetting agent. This makes up 45 to 55% of the materials in the bag. The numbers 0.21, 0.11, and 0.16 refer to the NPK ratio. Total fertilizer content only amounts to about 0.5% of the bag. Again, we're looking at around an ounce or 0.5 ounce or 14 grams. But these are synthetic fertilizers that were really never meant to support long-term plant health. They give the plant a temporary boost, and then they stifle microbial health in the soil so that plants end up becoming reliant on fertilizer from Miracle-Gro cells, which means that you have to go back and buy more to keep your plants producing year after year. Incredible business model, honestly. Now, for this bag of goodies, on sale, I got this for $4.99. I think the pre-sale was like $6. This amount of soil will probably fill a single tray of soil blocks, which is what we plant in. Now, if you're starting a few plants this year and you don't want to put in a ton of work into making your own potting mix, find a bag that actually contains good ingredients and leaves out the chemicals, and there you go. But if you're trying to grow all of your own food and flowers, you're starting hundreds, even thousands of plants from seed like us, it's gonna be well worth it to make your own potting mix. So for our potting mix, we use Compost, Coco coir, and Vermiculite as our base growing medium. 2 parts compost, 2 parts Coco coir, and 1 part Vermiculite is the basic recipe. 2 parts Coco coir and 1 part Vermiculite. And that is our base growing medium. Mix it up, and there you go. Now for our compost, we use our homemade stuff. This has been heated up to 160 degrees, brought back down, and then aged for a few more months. We incorporate worms into our piles once they've cooled down, and so this has some level of worm castings in it already. You could totally toss in some worm castings to supplement your compost, especially if you're buying a store-bought or bulk compost. Because we're using homemade, we know exactly what's in it. This is cow manure, leaves, straw, crop residue, bokashi material, and biochar. Pretty straightforward compost, nothing in there contaminating it. The one downside to using your own compost is that you'll most likely have a few weed seeds. A few usually slip through the high temperatures, and you'll avoid those if you buy in compost. What we're also getting from our homemade stuff is guaranteed microbial activity. You may or may not get that from the stuff that you buy because companies that make it don't always monitor their temperatures closely enough, and those windrows that they're making can get up to 170, 180, even up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're just burning off most of the microbes. So the compost runs the risk of being a little dead. Plus, you don't really know everything that is necessarily going into it. Even from organic composts, I've picked out plastic pieces, stuff that I've had delivered. I've bought bags of compost that are super woody, not very well broken down. So be particular about what you're using. You can totally shell out for some really nice quality compost, but it's gonna cost you a little bit. It might just be worth it if you're making only a few trays worth of soil blocks. Regardless of whether you buy or make your compost, we're going to want to sift this stuff. We use a 1/2-inch hardware cloth sifter that we made out of some 2x4s, and this gets us a decently fine material. This could probably work in our medium soil blocks or in pots, but we like to take it one step further just to be safe, and we sift it again through a 1/4 incher. This just gives us a really nice fine compost that matches the consistency of our other main ingredient, which is coco coir. The reason we went with coco coir this year is that it's the best option for us at the scale that we're growing at. We're starting thousands of plants this year, and we wanted something that is going to be good for the plants, easy for us to use, and at least somewhat sustainable. Coco coir is a waste product. It's made from the fibers and shells of coconuts that would otherwise be tossed. It's not a perfect product because coconut production and processing and shipping, it's not a perfect system, but it's a better option in our opinion than peat moss because peat moss is widely considered an unsustainable option. Peat bogs are not a renewable source. In the past, we've also used things like sheep's wool, which we really liked and would recommend, but we found that we're kind of finding some difficulty getting it to work perfectly with our soil blocker, especially the mini, which we're using a lot this year. I think for potted plants, sheep's wool would actually be a great, maybe ideal option. And finally, we're using vermiculite. Again, this is not a perfect option because of sustainability issues, but it's kind of one of the only options that we're aware of right now, and it's pretty affordable, non-toxic. There used to be concerns about asbestos and vermiculite, but any company that sells it is going to test for asbestos now that we know how dangerous it is. You can also use perlite as a draining component for your potting mix, but we opt for vermiculite because it seems to work best in our climate. So there you go. Those are the 3 ingredients that we use in our potting mix. Now, especially if you've got a nice quality compost, you can stop here. You don't need to add anything else. And I did the math on this one. The thumbnail didn't lie. This stuff runs you pennies. To make 8 quarts of this potting mix costs us $1.70. Even if you choose to buy in compost, this stuff will run you only a few dollars more in the long run. So no matter what, you're gonna be saving money by making your own. Here's what it looks like to make this mix. First, we sift the compost through the 1/2-inch and the 1/4 inch sifters. Then we hydrate the coco coir and let it expand. This stuff expands to like 5 times its compacted size. So we just cut or shave off some pieces into our bin, and then we hydrate it with warm filtered water. Make sure that all the water you use is dechlorinated. We use reverse osmosis filter, which is probably overkill, but hey, we've got it, might as well use it. Once the coco coir has fully hydrated, we measure out our ingredients. We just use a scoop or a bowl and do rough measurements. 2 scoops of compost, 2 scoops of coco coir, 1 scoop of vermiculite. Mix it together while it's still relatively dry, and there you have it. A beautiful potting mix that is ready to be used. This stuff just feels great. Now, I said I'd share some upgrades that you can make to your potting mix. So if you have already mastered this stuff and you want to make it better, or if you just want to tinker right from the get-go, here's some extra goodies that we're experimenting with this year. The main thing that we're adding to every batch of potting mix this year is azomite. Azomite is a natural soil conditioner, contains rock dust and trace minerals. It's totally safe to use, OMRI listed, and a little goes a long way. You can find the chart on our recipe sheet, but we apply approximately 2 tablespoons of azomite to 5 quarts of potting mix. Definitely incorporate this stuff while your material is still dry so that you can mix it up more easily. And we'll come back to another dry ingredient that you can add, but let's take a look at some liquid amendments that you might want to add with the water. So to start, I'll give all the amounts in terms of 1 gallon of water. So to a gallon of water, you could add 1 tablespoon of lactic acid bacteria, or LAB, which is a natural farming input made by culturing rice wash, water, and milk. You've really got a nice group of healthy bacteria kind of acting as the bouncers that protect the soil and the plant from bad bacteria and fungi. So to use this, like I said, just add a tablespoon of LAB to the water that you're using to hydrate your potting mix before making your soil blocks or filling up a pot that you're going to plant some seeds into. You only need a tiny bit of this stuff. Another natural farming amendment that we recommend using is brown rice vinegar or apple cider vinegar. This stuff you probably have around the house. It's just going to help facilitate vegetative growth. It contains high levels of acetic acid, which provide another layer of defense against the unwanted pathogens. We add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar per gallon of water. Fermented plant juice, or FPJ, is something that you also add 2 tablespoons of to your water. This is an input made from comfrey or nettles or some other high nutrient plant debris. You just add brown sugar in equal parts by weight to the plant debris, wait a week, for the nutrients and growth hormones to get extracted, and there you go. And finally, to round out the liquid inputs, we are also using a tiny bit of OHN, Oriental Herbal Nutrient, again found in the suite of Korean natural farming amendments. Check out our video on how to make it, but this one is one of the most time intensive. It essentially is a tincture of some of the best herbs that contain immune supportive compounds. It's made of ginger, garlic, angelica root, cinnamon bark, and licorice root. Really good stuff. We are only adding a tablespoon to the gallon of water, and if your OHN is over a year old, then you'll want to add even less because the potency increases as it ages. Now back to the dry ingredients, something that we're just starting to experiment with, so we can't fully endorse this yet, but we are testing out incorporating IMO4 made from our potting soil and IMO3 that we made last fall. IMO stands for indigenous microorganisms. These are the bacteria, fungi, and yeasts that exist in the most robust soils in your local area. You start by collecting IMO1 from the forest using a box of cooked rice. You preserve it with brown sugar, and then you diversify the microbes using a high carbohydrate substrate like wheat bran or oats to make IMO3, which is shelf stable for 6 months to a year. To make IMO4, you add equal parts native soil, or in our case potting mix, to IMO3, wet it down a bit, and let it culture for about a week. This is what ours looked like when it was finished. Pretty intense fungal bloomage. We're adding a single quart of this mix, sifted of course, to 5 quarts of potting mix. And we'll see how it goes. We're gonna be fine-tuning this over the next few years and seeing what really works for us, so stay tuned. Again, all the ratios and ingredients can be found using the link in the description. Otherwise, guys, thank you for watching. And if you're watching this in winter, you will definitely wanna check out our video on winter sowing, the seed starting hack that I wish I knew about sooner. So check that out, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.